Thanks so much to all my patrons. Join now to help support the channel and help pick the books that I review. Link in the description. And I am done. Okay, so I just got done reading Old Man's War. This is book 1 in the Old Man's War series by John Scalzi, and I want to give you my unedited thoughts on finishing this book, which was literally just right now. So, yeah, this was just okay. I think 3 stars is fair for this. There's things that I liked about it, had a lot of problems with it, and it kind of fell into this category that I end up putting a lot of sci-fi, because I'm not primarily a sci-fi guy, so take my opinion with a grain of salt, but I feel like I'm mainly talking to a fantasy audience here, so that's all I can really speak to, because that's who I am. But it falls into this category of books with a really good premise and some cool science, but that fail on some character development and the overall plotting to keep things interesting. I find with a lot of sci-fi, and I'm sure this is not singularly true. In fact, I know it's not, because there's some sci-fi that definitely breaks this that I've read, and I haven't read a ton of it, where it's more about the ideas than it is about these rich characters and this amazing dialogue and this rich prose. But some of the coolest ideas and these concepts that I've read, some of the best stuff I've read has come from sci-fi when it comes to that. And this is really no exception, but that's what keeps it to the 3-star range. And unfortunately for me, these overall concepts, I feel like are not as important as those other things in a book. I can read a 5-star book that has some basic concepts, but really nails these other aspects of the book. But to have the inverse, it's hard for me to really give it that score. So let's talk about some things that I enjoyed here and about the book in general. So I got into this book not really knowing anything about John Scalzi, because this book won my Patreon raffle wheel. So every month on my Patreon, people that are a member of that can submit a book for me to read and review, and I'll do a big wheel spin that I post on a YouTube short. And whatever it lands on, I have to read and review. And some of my favorite books that I've ever read have showed up on this, like Dandelion Dynasty. Unfortunately, I've also had some things like Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas that I've ended up having to read. So it's a crapshoot. And a lot of times I'm not really familiar with the authors when they get selected. And I think a lot of times that's why people put books on theirs, because they want to expose me to some different authors and see if I can fall in love with books that they're in love with. And so I didn't know anything about John Scalzi. I've since found out that he's a rather very successing sci-fi writer. And, his books had tons of reviews, far, far more than most fantasy authors that I've read. He seems extremely successful. But so I got into this not knowing anything about it other than the title of the book. And as I got into it, and I won't spoil anything here. The spoilers that I'll give are things that will show up in the first, very small handful of pages in the book. So probably less spoilers than the back cover would give. And I didn't read the back cover, but I'm guessing the back cover would spoil quite a bit more here. But the premise of this book is that it's pretty far distant in the future, although things on Earth feel pretty similar for the most part. But the one big difference is that humans have gone out to take over other planets in the galaxy, and they have this huge, intergalactic expeditionary force that's out there fighting, and fighting against lots of different alien species. But the communication from that force is almost non-existent as it comes back to Earth. It almost feels like 2 completely different entities, and Earth is the secondary of the 2. But they use humans from Earth to go fight. And the deal is if you join the military, you have to, basically give up your life on Earth. You'll never get to come back. You'll never get to talk to anybody on Earth again. And you get to go join this fighting force. But the contract is that when you go, and it's only older people that go that are over the age of 75, that when you go, there is some technology that is mysterious, and you find out later on in the book what the deal is, and I won't spoil that part for you, because it's really fun when you get to find out what it is. But something that de-ages you and makes you younger again in some sort of way. And So when people get older and they realize their life is going to get close to an end or their loved ones have died, like the main character here, as you open up the book, he is lamenting the loss of his wife that he lost recently. And he decides to go join. He's older. I think he's 75 when this book hits. He has nothing else to really live for. He feels like he's going to be dying soon. So he wants to go join the military, like so many other people will end up doing. And from there, he joins the military, and you get to find out the mysteries that are surrounding why they're not communicating back to Earth, how they can de-age you, what that's all about, and a lot of different little twists and turns along the way that kind of keep the book kind of rolling along and set up this rather long series into the future. So that premise alone, I thought was pretty fascinating. It definitely had me hooked. Reading about the technology, about how these humans end up going to outer space, the mystery involved on why are they not communicating back to Earth, and this whole different. There's a lot of things that are teased that that are going to get solved for you later on, that were inventive and fun. And it had this main character that I found was interesting on the surface. You find a lot of books that won't, start off with kind of a broken older character. I enjoy that. So many fantasy books, the extreme majority of them have these main characters that are, under 30 years old, that will, or quite a bit younger, in the teenage years. And so to have a character that's much older, that's fun and unique. So I was into it. I was going with it, but the problems became more glaring as the book kind of entered the second half of this book. Now, it's not a very long book. I don't know exactly how long it is, because on the e-reader that I do on the Kobo, it just makes up a page number based on how big your text is. So for me, it was, in the low 300s. So not a very long book, because I've read plenty of books on my Kobo that are 800 plus pages. So not very long. But as you go into the second half of this, I felt like the issues became very prevalent. And the issues that I found, without spoiling anything, would be that, you have this main character who is entertaining in that they're a little more snarky, they're a little more sarcastic, but every character that you meet ends up like a clone of that main character. It's like Scalzi, maybe he writes differently in other books, but it's like Scalzi here said, I have this one character type I'm going to write, and all of the characters are going to act and sound the same way. That is a hallmark of bad writing for me. I want my characters to have a unique voice. I want them to be different. I want you to, with a very short time frame, make it very evident who these characters are and what makes them special and unique. But I just finished this book in front of you, and I couldn't tell you who these different characters are or why they're different, or, they're all blended up into basically the same character. And what it did, unfortunately, was make me not care about them. And it also blended me not caring as much about the main character, because it just felt like it lacked that soul that so many other books have. So that was a big problem for me. The other problem I had was that you've got this character who feels like we ended up in this rinse repeat, and a lot of fantasy goes down this path as well, of a character that is too smart for his own good, can solve all problems. What is the male version of a Mary Sue type character, but is kind of good at everything, never runs into any major problems. The problems he comes into, that they're going to get solved. It became like this kind of repetitive sort of, almost monotonous sort of thing as we went along. And so that became a bit of a drag. And then things started moving so rapidly that I wanted things to slow down. I wanted this book to be significantly longer so I could get some more depth to my characters, and we could understand more about these alien cultures that were interesting. But, in a short book, when you don't even start meeting these different alien cultures until the second half of a short book, you meet many different types of races and fights and battles, and it lacks me caring about them because they just come at such a rapid pace. I wanted that cool down period where I could start to feel something, but I never really felt anything. And that's problematic. And so I realized that the problems I'm saying are pretty glaring, right? And so why would I give it a 3 stars? For 3 stars for me is neither good nor bad. It's right in the middle. Because I did find myself so invested in the beginning of this book. I did find myself intrigued at learning some of the mysteries here. And I did find myself wanting to see where the main character ended up. And, you know, there was a plot point that happened in the second half of this book. If you've read this book, it involves a woman character. I think that tells you enough to know what I'm talking about. I found that that addition an intriguing one, although very, what's the word I'm looking for? It completely improbable to the point of ridiculous. The odds of this character kind of popping up randomly, that felt like I had to really suspend belief, although I'm reading a sci-fi book that involves aliens. And so, you know, suspending belief is kind of par for the course. But it just was like, what, really? We're going there? But I did like the character by the end of it. I did like the direction that it started going. And I was intrigued to see, you know, the resolution that the character would go through that unfortunately I'm never going to really find out about because I'm not going to continue reading on with the series. It didn't grab me enough. You know, I need to give a book at least 4 stars for me to really want to keep reading the next one because I have so many different series that I'm into. If I was reading far fewer series, you know, maybe I would keep going in this. And, you know, if you read this, there's a good chance that you'll feel invested and want to go forward. And that's great. But, you know, I'm reading 20 plus series, you know, at the same time and waiting for next books to come out in the next series. I'm probably reading more than that, you know? And so something's got to be pretty special for me to want to keep, you know, to invest my time when I have these other books lined up that I know that I'm going to love. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on it. But felt like a cookie cutter sort of sci-fi book that I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like maybe people that have read a lot of sci-fi would say like, yeah, Matt, that's the point of this book. Maybe it's poking fun at other books, or maybe it's doing something that I'm just not able to grasp because I'm not a major sci-fi reader. So if that's the case, let me know. And if it's the case that Scalzi is not this writer that writes all these characters the same, I'm curious to know that too, because it feels like I wouldn't be surprised if I picked up another Scalzi book and I felt like I was reading the same characters again, because it seems almost inexcusable that he would write so many different characters that all acted and felt the same way about things in the same book. It doesn't make sense unless that's just what he does. So, and maybe that's what people love about it, right? So, you know, and he's massively successful. So, you know, maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I'm just truly not the biggest sci-fi guy, which I think is true. But, you know, I do love some sci-fi, but a lot of the sci-fi I love have a lot of fantasy elements to them. Something like The Sun Eater, which is, you know, almost more fantasy than sci-fi in some ways. So that's all I got to say about this. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Amy, Alex P, Anna G, CJ, Doused, Darren, Daniel O, JD, Jonathan, Josh, Nathan T, Ned's Book Channel, 𝗟𝗏𝗄𝐴, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Sydney Baker, Slay, Tahir, Anna, Andra, Blair, Brock, Evan, Joe UK, Kat Mick, Marcus, Michael Sugarman, and Sky. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.